The sound of a champagne flute, shattering against marble, cut through the gala like a gunshot. Splinters of crystal skidding across the obsidian floor in a slow, glittering arc. Cha Do-yoon did not flinch. He stood beneath the chandelier of the Aurum Hotel ballroom, the diffusion lighting catching the natural sheen of his cheekbones, his pearl ivory lapels stark against the bottomless black of his bespoke Brioni jacket. Across from him, Chairman Min lowered his hand, and the air around them collapsed inward, every conversation in the room dying mid-syllable. 500 guests held their breath. Do-yoon adjusted his cufflink, a sliver of platinum biting into the soft cotton of his cuff, and that single, mundane gesture rearranged the hierarchy of the entire Korean underworld. Then she walked in. She did not enter the ballroom so much as she edited it. A woman in a sculptural black avant-garde gown, the fabric so densely pleated it looked carved from volcanic stone, walked past the dying conversations with two small figures in tow. Twin children. A boy and a girl, no older than 5, dressed in matching ivory wool coats with mother-of-pearl buttons, their hands folded in front of them with the unsettling composure of seasoned diplomats. The woman's hair was pulled back so tightly the lamplight slid off her temple in a single liquid line. She did not look at Cha Do-yoon. She looked at Chairman Min, the rival who had spent 6 years carving away pieces of Do-yoon's empire, one harbor, one warehouse, one bribed prosecutor at a time. And Chairman Min, the man who had just shattered a glass to demand silence, lowered himself onto one knee. To the children. A wine steward dropped a tray somewhere in the back. No one turned. Do-yoon's stillness became something geological, the kind of stillness that precedes the splitting of a mountain. He watched Chairman Min reach into the inner pocket of his charcoal silk wool blend and produce a heavy tungsten lighter, the same model Do-yoon had once gifted his second-in-command a decade ago. Min flicked it open, snapped it shut, and pressed it into the boy's small palm. "A gift for the young master," Min said, loud enough for the front 3 tables. "Your father would approve." The boy did not smile. He weighed the lighter in his hand like a jeweler appraising a stone, then slipped it into the pocket of his ivory coat with the precision of a man twice his age. The girl tilted her head, studying Do-yoon across the marble expanse, and her eyes, the exact slate gray of his own mother's eyes, pinned him in place. Recognition crawled up Do-yoon's spine like cold water. He knew that face. He had seen it twice. Once, wrinkled and red and screaming, the morning he had told the doctor to remove them from his sight. Once more, 6 hours later, in a paper file he had signed and burned in a brass bin beside his desk. The woman, finally, turned her head. Yoon Hai-rim. The name surfaced in him with the violence of a body breaking the surface of a frozen lake. She did not greet him. She did not need to. She lifted her hand and placed it, lightly, on Chairman Min's shoulder as he rose. The gesture was a contract written in air. These children are his now. And the gala resumed, the way oceans resume after a body has gone under. Do-yoon did not move for 9 minutes. His chief of security, a man named Go, who had survived 2 prison sentences and a kidney transplant without ever showing fear, stood at his elbow and did not breathe through his nose. The other captains at Do-yoon's table, 6 men whose combined net worth could buy a small country, kept their eyes fixed on their untouched plates of seared abalone. One of them, Captain Bayek, reached for his water glass, realized halfway that the sound of ice shifting might draw attention, and let his hand fall back into his lap. The terror in the room was not loud. It was the terror of a forest the instant before a predator screams. When Do-yoon finally spoke, his voice was almost soft. "Bring the car," Rain began as he stepped under the porte-cochere, fat drops smacking the black lacquer of his Maybach with the percussive irregularity of a snare drum being tuned. He slid into the back seat, and the leather drank the weight of him without a sound. Go climbed into the front. The driver, who had been working for Do-yoon for 11 years, did not ask the destination. He simply waited. "The Hay Rim file," Do-yoon said. "The original, not the copy I burned." "Sir, you burned the original." A pause, long, the kind that precedes the loss of a finger. "Then find me the woman who wrote it." The Maybach pulled into traffic, and the rain began to distort the view through the windshield. Neon signs from Cheongdam-dong smearing into ribbons of sodium yellow and arterial red. Do-yoon pressed his thumb against the cold glass of the window and watched the city dissolve. Somewhere in the wet darkness of Seoul, two children he had disowned were riding in a different car, wearing different colors, answering to a different name. The lighter in the boy's pocket was probably still warm from Min's hand. He closed his eyes. He did not sleep. The Hay Rim of memory came to him not in pictures, but in textures. The cashmere of a hospital robe he had once paid for, the hollow click of her engagement ring being set down on a glass table, the exact temperature of the tea she had been drinking the night he had told her, quietly and without inflection, that the twins could not exist, not as his, not in this life. The Cha family had buried 3 children to enemy gunfire in the last generation alone, and he would not, could not, paint targets on 2 infants before they could walk. He had given her a number, a clean exit, a new identity in Vancouver, in Lisbon, in any city she chose. He had been, in his own crooked architecture of love, trying to save them. She had spat in his face, quietly, like a queen, and then she had vanished. 5 years of absence, so complete he had wondered, in his weaker moments, if he had imagined her entirely. Now she had returned, not as the woman he had wronged, but as the consort of his most patient enemy. And the twins he had erased from every ledger, every photograph, every prayer, were being groomed as the heirs to the very empire built to dismantle his own. The Maybach turned onto a private road. Go opened a sealed envelope and slid a single photograph over the partition. A surveillance shot, grainy but legible. The 2 children in a private classroom, seated at a low rosewood table. The boy was disassembling a small handgun, his fingers moving with trained efficiency. The girl was reading aloud from a ledger of shipping manifests, her pronunciation of Mandarin port names flawless. A tutor stood behind them. The tutor was a man Do-yoon had personally trained, then exiled 11 years ago. Do-yoon set the photograph face down on the seat beside him. He did not let his hand tremble. He simply allowed the cold to spread inside his chest until it reached the back of his teeth. "Go, sir. How much would it cost to buy the school?" "The school, sir, or every person inside it. Every person, every brick, every line of code in their attendance records." Go was silent for the length of a city block, then 240 billion won by Friday. Do it by Wednesday. The next morning, Yoon Hai-rim was drinking coffee on a terrace overlooking the Han River, the steam from her cup rising in a thin, perfect column. She wore an oversized cream cashmere robe, no makeup, her hair loose for the first time in 11 months. The twins were inside, on the floor of the living room, building a city out of black marble dominoes. A nanny stood at the door, pretending not to listen, pretending not to be three former Special Forces operators stitched into the suit of a single woman. Hayrim's phone vibrated. She did not look at it. She knew who it would be. Wit. Her assistant, Mira, came onto the terrace with a folded newspaper and a second phone. Chairman Min wants to know if last night went as planned. Tell him it went better. He'll ask what better means. Tell him Cha Do-yoon did not blink for 9 minutes. Tell him a man who cannot blink can be cut. Mira left. Hayrim picked up the first phone, the one that had been vibrating. The screen read only, D, no name. She let it ring. She let it ring through 3 full cycles. On the 4th, she answered, but did not speak. His voice on the other end was exactly as she remembered. Low, unhurried, a voice that had never, in its entire adult life, needed to be raised. They have my mother's eyes. She closed her own, just for a second. They have a great deal more than that. Hayrim, do not. I am asking, once, as a courtesy. You disowned a courtesy, Do-yoon. You signed it away in triplicate. There was a long silence, filled with the wet hush of rain on his end of the line and the distant laughter of children on hers. When he spoke again, his voice had not changed in volume, but something inside it had moved, the way a glacier moves, invisibly, catastrophically. Name your price, she laughed, not cruelly, almost gently. You think this is about money. Everything is about money, eventually. Then you have already lost. She hung up. Inside, the boy looked up from the Domino City. He had built the entire skyline of Gangnam in miniature, and at the center of it, he had placed the tungsten lighter Chairman Min had given him, upright, like a black monolith. The girl was nudging dominoes into position around it, a slow encirclement. Hayrim watched them from the doorway and felt something that was neither pride nor grief, but a third thing, older than both. She had not raised them to be soft. She had not been afforded the luxury. She had raised them to be the answer to a question their father had been too afraid to ask. The boy looked up. Was that him? Yes. What did he sound like? Hayrim thought about it. She thought about the cufflinks, the ballroom, the lighter, the way Do-yoon had stood beneath the chandelier like a statue someone had forgotten to take down. She thought about the night she had walked out of his apartment with twin embryos still hidden inside her body. The night she had decided that survival would not be a gift she accepted from him. She thought about the long, gray years in a Busan apartment with no name on the door, the years before Chairman Min had found her and offered her something more useful than safety. He sounded, she said finally, like a man who has just realized the door he locked from the inside has no handle on his side either. The girl smiled. It was not a child's smile. By Wednesday, Do-yoon owned the school. By Thursday, he owned the shipping company that laundered Chairman Min's primary revenue stream through the port of Incheon. By Friday, 3 of Min's 6 lieutenants had received envelopes containing photographs of their own families and a single sentence in Do-yoon's handwriting. Choose. 2 of them chose Do-yoon. The third chose his family and disappeared into a cabin in Gangwon-do that Do-yoon, in a rare and unwitnessed act of mercy, allowed him to keep. The empire of Chairman Min began to crack along its seams, not loudly, but with the slow, structural inevitability of a dam giving way 1 millimeter at a time. And still, Hayrim did not flinch. She had prepared for this. She had spent 5 years preparing for this. She had watched Do-yoon from a distance, through proxies, through hacked email servers, through a young accountant she had placed inside his organization, 2 years before the twins could speak in full sentences. She knew the rhythms of his rage. She knew that he would burn the world to retrieve what he had thrown away, not out of love, but out of the deeper, more terrifying compulsion of a man who could not bear to be proven wrong. She had counted on it. The confrontation, when it came, did not happen in a warehouse. It did not happen on a rooftop. It happened in the rain, on a private pier in Yongjong-do, beneath a sky the color of cold steel. Do-yoon arrived alone. He had insisted. Hae-rim arrived with the twins because she had insisted. Chairman Min did not arrive at all. By that point, Chairman Min was dying in a hospital in Singapore of a sudden, aggressive cancer that no one, not even Hae-rim, had needed to arrange. The universe occasionally does its own bookkeeping. The pier was empty, save for a single black sedan and a single white one. Between them, a stretch of wet concrete, 15 meters of nothing. Do-yoon stepped out of the black sedan. Rain immediately began to bead on the wool of his charcoal overcoat, the kind of fine, dense Italian fabric that resists water for exactly 43 seconds before it begins to drink. He walked to the midpoint and stopped. He did not put up an umbrella. He did not turn up his collar. Hae-rim stepped out of the white sedan. She wore a long, structured trench in a shade of pale bone, the lapels so sharp they could have cut paper. She held an umbrella, black, oversized, and she held it not over herself but over the two small figures who emerged from the car after her. The boy, the girl. They walked, hand in hand, with the same disquieting composure they had carried into the gala. The girl was wearing the lighter on a long platinum chain around her neck, tucked beneath her collar like a relic. They stopped 2 meters from Do-yoon. The rain pulled the world quiet. For a long moment, no one spoke. Do-yoon looked at the twins, and the twins looked at Do-yoon, and Hae-rim looked at all three of them. And somewhere in the gray sky above them, a gull cried once and was carried sideways by the wind. The boy spoke first. His voice was small. It was not soft. "You are the one who said no." Do-yoon swallowed. He had killed men for less than the look the boy was giving him. He had killed men for nothing at all. He found, in the cathedral of his own throat, that he had no voice. "Mother said," the girl added, "that you said no twice, once with your mouth and once with a pen." 3 times, the boy corrected. He burned the pen. "That counts as the same time." "It does not." They argued like accountants, like prosecutors, like the children of a woman who had taught them that ambiguity was the only true enemy. Hae-rim said nothing. She let them speak. She had earned this silence, and she would not crowd it. Do-yoon lowered himself, slowly, to one knee. The wet concrete soaked instantly through the wool of his trousers. He did not seem to notice. He looked at the 2 children, his children, the words formed in his chest like a wound finally allowed to bleed. And he did not reach for them. He had not earned that. He understood, with the brutal lucidity that had built his empire, that he would never earn that. "I said no," he said, "because I believed the word yes would kill you." The girl considered this. She tilted her head the same way she had tilted it across the ballroom, and the slate gray of her eyes was now very close to him, very steady. "It almost did anyway." "I know. Mother had to do everything alone." "I know. We learned to read in 3 languages because she did not know which country we would need to run to." "I know." "You do not get to say I know anymore," the boy said. His small hand tightened around his sister's. "You did not know. That is the whole problem." Do-yoon bowed his head. The rain found the back of his neck and began, slowly, to run down inside his collar. He did not move. He did not speak. The empire he had built, the men he had broken, the shipping lanes and the senators and the silent terrors of 1,000 boardrooms, all of it, in this single moment, was worth less to him than the privilege of being permitted to remain on his knees in front of 2 5-year-old strangers who carried his blood. Heirs stepped forward at last. She closed her umbrella with a single sharp click and let the rain take her, too. She stood beside her children, not in front of them, beside. "You will not have them," she said. "I know. You will not buy them. You will not negotiate for them. You will not appear in their school photographs or their wedding programs or their graduation videos. You forfeited those rooms. I know." "But—" She paused. The rain pressed her hair flat against her temple. She did not look beautiful. She looked like a verdict. "But you will fund them, anonymously, forever. You will pour every one of your filthy, blood-soaked fortune into trusts they will never know carry your name. You will protect them from a distance so vast they will never feel the weight of it. You will be the wall they do not see, and when they are grown and they ask me who paid for the walls, I will tell them the truth, not before, never before, and only if they ask." Do-yoon nodded once. The motion was small. It was the largest thing he had ever done. "And if they ask," he said, "and they wish to see me, then I will not stop them. And if they do not, then you will die alone, Cha Do-yoon, in a room full of money, and you will have earned every second of it." He smiled. It was a strange, broken thing on his face, an expression his bodyguards had never seen and would never see. "Yes," he said, "I will." The girl, who had been watching this exchange with the unblinking attention of a small judge, lifted the platinum chain from beneath her collar. The tungsten lighter swung at the end of it, heavy, cold, catching the gray light of the sky. She studied it for a moment. Then, with a precision that no 5-year-old should have possessed, she unhooked the clasp and held the lighter out toward Do-yoon on the flat of her small palm. "This is yours," she said. "I think. Mother said the man at the party used it to make you angry. Things that are used to make people angry should go back to where they came from." Do-yoon stared at the lighter. He recognized it now, the way one recognizes a face in an old photograph after decades. He had given it to a young lieutenant named Min 11 years ago, when Min had still been loyal. Before the loyalty had soured into ambition. Before the ambition had reached for everything Do-yoon owned, including, eventually, the woman Do-yoon had cast away. The wheel had completed its turn. The same metal, the same weight, a different hand returning it. He reached out. His fingers did not shake. He took the lighter from his daughter's palm with the same care he might have used to lift a sleeping bird. The metal was warm from her skin. He closed his fist around it, and the rain ran between his knuckles. And for the first time in his adult life, Cha Do-yoon, feared in 7 cities, respected in 11, wept. Silently, without movement. Tears mixing indistinguishably with the rain so that even Go, watching from the black sedan with binoculars and a sidearm, would later swear he saw nothing at all. Heirs placed her hand on the girl's shoulder. She turned her children, gently, back toward the white sedan. They did not look back. Do-yoon remained on his knees on the wet concrete of the pier for a long time after the white car had gone. The rain thickened, then thinned, then thickened again. Eventually, Go came and stood beside him with an umbrella, and Do-yoon did not acknowledge him, and Go did not speak, because there was nothing in the lexicon of their 20-year relationship that could be used here. When Do-yoon finally stood, his trousers were ruined. His coat was ruined. His shoes were ruined. He did not appear to notice any of it. He walked to the Maybach and slid into the back seat, and the leather drank the weight of him, and the driver did not ask the destination. He simply waited. "Home," Do-yoon said. The Maybach pulled away from the pier. Rain began to distort the view through the windshield, the gray sky and the gray sea blurring into a single, uncertain horizon. Do-yoon opened his fist. The tungsten lighter sat in his palm, dark and dense and warm. He turned it once between his fingers. He did not flick it open. He did not light anything. He simply held it and let it cool, slowly, in the recycled air of the car. In the months that followed, the trusts were established. 7 of them, layered across 4 jurisdictions, fortified with the kind of legal architecture that small nations envied. The twins would never want for anything. The twins would never know the source. Heirs received a single envelope, hand-delivered, containing the deed to a property in Jeju and a key. The note inside read only, "In case you ever need to disappear again." D. She read it twice. She placed it in a drawer. She did not throw it away. She did not write back. Chairman Min died in his Singapore hospital on a Tuesday. The funeral was sparsely attended. No one wept. The empire he had spent 2 decades assembling dissolved within 90 days, sold off in tidy parcels to legitimate corporations whose new boards of directors all, coincidentally, owed favors to a particular Cha family lawyer. The twins were enrolled in an international school in Seoul under a name that was not their father's and not Min's. They thrived. The boy developed an interest in marine biology, the girl in constitutional law. Neither of them, so far as their mother could tell, ever asked about the source of the trust funds. Not yet. Years would pass. They would ask, eventually. Heirs had promised them the truth, and she did not break promises to her own children. But that conversation belonged to a future she could not yet see, in a room she had not yet entered, and she did not let it haunt her. In a penthouse high above Cheongdam-dong, on a night when the rain came down hard enough to distort the view through the floor-to-ceiling glass, Cha Do-yoon sat alone in a room lit only by a single, soft white lamp. The chandelier had been removed. The bar had been dismantled. The marble floor remained, but the obsidian had been polished to a darker, deeper shade, the color of a closed eye. On the low table in front of him sat a single object, a tungsten lighter, heavy, cold, tarnished from years of being turned over and over between the same restless fingers. He picked it up. He weighed it in his palm. He did not flick it open. Somewhere in the city, 2 children he was not allowed to know were sleeping under the weight of an enormous, invisible wall. And he was the wall, and they would never feel him. And that was the only love he had been permitted to give. He was, at last, a father in the only way he had earned. He set the lighter back down on the table. The metal made a small, precise sound against the wood, almost like glass, almost like a shattered champagne flute against a marble floor. He listened to it. He let it fade. Then he turned off the lamp, and the room, like the rest of him, went perfectly, finally still.